She never expected the knock at her door that night, the soft one that carried a kind of trembling behind it. It was the kind of sound that made her pause, heart rising as if some unspoken truth was trying to slip into the quiet of the house. Mira had been standing by the window, watching the streetlights blur in the thin fog, when it happened. She turned, unsure why her chest tightened, but instinctively knowing the moment mattered. The door creaked open just enough for Rowan to peek in. He looked smaller than usual, even though he was already in his late teens. Still young, but old enough for the world to weigh on him. He wasn't her child by blood, but the bond she felt with him had grown in ways she didn't entirely understand. "Can I talk to you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She nodded gently, stepping aside so he could enter her room. He lingered on the threshold for a moment, as if deciding whether to keep walking or to run back to his own thoughts. But finally, he crossed the space and sat at the edge of the armchair near her desk. Mira lowered herself onto the foot of the bed, keeping her posture open, warm, steady. She had learned over time that Rowan only spoke when he felt safe, and even then, only in pieces. The clock on the wall ticked softly, each second stretching the silence between them. She waited, giving him the kind of patience he never once asked for, but always needed. When he finally exhaled, it came out in a shiver. "I don't know who else to talk to," he murmured. His hands were clasped so tightly that his knuckles had gone pale. Her heart tugged, gentle but deep. "I'm here," she told him. "Whatever it is, you can tell me." He nodded, but his gaze drifted toward the closed curtains, as though his thoughts were hiding beyond them. Mira noticed the way his shoulders curled inward, how his breath shook with something more than worry. He seemed to gather his courage one fragile thread at a time. "You know," he said quietly, "there are nights when I feel like everything is too heavy, like I'm supposed to be stronger than I am." He swallowed. "And I hate feeling like I'm letting anyone down." Mira leaned forward, her voice soft as warm rain. "You're not letting anyone down. Feeling overwhelmed doesn't make you weak." He shook his head, eyes glistening, the vulnerability so raw it reached her before he said another word. "I don't want to disappoint Dad or you." Her breath caught. There was something in the way he said those words, something fragile, something trusting, something she had never expected from him. She reached out slowly, placing her hand over his, giving him time to pull away if he needed to. But he didn't. Instead, he released a breath he'd been holding for far too long, the tension easing just enough for him to meet her gaze. "I feel like I can talk to you in a way I can't talk to anyone else," he whispered. The warmth of those words settled deep inside her. She had spent years trying to be steady for him, gentle in all the places life had been unkind. But hearing him say he trusted her, really trusted her, made her chest ache in a way she couldn't quite name. As she held his hand, she realized something else. Trust wasn't quiet at all. It echoed. It filled the room. It softened every corner of the night. Near the end of their conversation, as he finally lifted his eyes, she felt the shift, subtle but unmistakable, like the moment before dawn when everything glows but nothing is visible yet. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. Rowan inhaled as if he was about to share something deeper, something heavier, something she wasn't sure she was prepared to hear but knew would stay with her forever. And in that moment, with the house wrapped in midnight stillness and his trust hanging in the air like a quiet confession, Mira graced herself for the words that were about to come. Would they change everything? Mira felt the air shift as Rowan tried to steady himself. He wasn't someone who opened up easily, and the fact that he sat there in her room at such a late hour told her that whatever weighed on him had been building for a long time. He lifted his head slowly, eyes reflecting the soft glow of the lamp beside her. There was a hesitation in him that made her heart tighten, as if he were choosing each word with delicate care. "I know I shouldn't bother you this late," he murmured. "You're not bothering me," she replied gently. Her voice came out smooth and steady, even though she could feel a quiet storm forming inside her. "I'm glad you came." He breathed in deeply, as if her reassurance gave him enough courage to speak again. "I don't talk to many people," he admitted. "It's easier to pretend everything's fine, easier than trying to explain it." Mira nodded, understanding more than she ever said aloud. She remembered being that age, trying so hard to be composed, trying so hard to hide the cracks. But she also knew some things never healed without being spoken. Rowan rubbed his palms together, gaze lowering. "You're the only one who feels safe," he said quietly. The words touched her deeper than she expected. She shifted slightly on the bed, careful not to move too suddenly, afraid she might break the fragile trust forming in the room. "Rowan," she whispered, "you don't have to hold everything inside. Whatever you're feeling, it matters, and you matter." He blinked slowly, almost as though her kindness surprised him every time. Then he looked toward the window, where the faint moonlight pooled against the curtains. "Dad's been busy," he said. His tone wasn't resentful, just tired. "I know he works hard. I know he's trying. But sometimes I feel like I don't fit anywhere." The confession pressed gently against her heart. She leaned forward a little, her voice warm but calm. "You fit here," she told him, "more than you realize." He let out a shaky laugh, one that carried a hint of disbelief. "You always say things like that," he murmured, "and every time I want to believe you." She smiled softly. "Why wouldn't you?" Rowan hesitated, fingers curling against the armrest. "Because trusting people hasn't always gone well for me." Mira felt the weight behind that simple sentence. She didn't ask for details. He would tell her what he wanted to, when he wanted to. She had learned that gentle silence often opened more doors than questions ever could. He glanced at her again, and in that small moment, she saw the quiet ache he carried. She recognized it, not because she knew his whole story, but because she knew what it felt like to carry something alone. "Mira," he whispered slowly, "do you ever feel like you're trying to be strong for everyone, but inside you're tired too?" Her breath caught. The question hit closer than she expected. She clasped her hands together softly, grounding herself. "More often than you might think," she answered honestly. "But there's strength in letting someone sit beside you in those moments. You don't have to hide from the people who care." He looked down again, and a long silence stretched between them, peaceful, not heavy. The kind of silence that only happens when two hearts stop trying to pretend. Then, almost without meaning to, he whispered, "That's why I came to you tonight." Her chest warmed in a way she couldn't explain. Not romantic, not dramatic, just deeply human. The kind of warmth that grows when someone chooses you as their safe place. Mira opened her mouth to speak, but Rowan rose slowly from the chair, pacing toward the window with uncertain steps. He pressed his hand against the cold glass, breathing quietly as he gathered whatever was left unspoken. There was something he needed to say. She could feel it, like a soft vibration under the stillness. When he finally turned back to her, his expression carried a truth he hadn't yet voiced. And she sensed, instinctively, tenderly, that the next words leaving his lips would shift the night in ways she wasn't prepared for. Rowan stood by the window, his silhouette framed by the thin silver glow of the moon. Mira could see the rise and fall of his breathing, each breath a quiet battle between fear and courage. She didn't rush him. She simply waited, hands folded gently in her lap, heart steady, even though a soft uncertainty stirred inside her. When he finally turned toward her, his eyes carried a depth she had only ever seen in someone on the edge of honesty. "I didn't just come here because I felt overwhelmed," he said softly. His voice trembled the way leaves tremble in a slow breeze, barely noticeable unless one truly looked. Mira nodded, giving him space to continue. Rowan took a few hesitant steps back toward the chair, but didn't sit. Instead, he stood there, weighing his words in the silence. "I came because I needed to tell you something I've been keeping to myself." Her fingers curled slightly against her knees, but she kept her expression warm, encouraging. "What is it?" she asked gently. He looked down at his hands. "I didn't know how to say it without sounding strange." He paused, inhaled deeply, and lifted his gaze again. "But you've been the one person who actually listens to me, the one person who sees me." Those words touched a tender chord inside her, unexpected, yet quietly profound. She rose from the bed in slow, careful steps, not wanting him to feel cornered or pressured. When she reached him, she kept a respectful distance, letting her presence be steady but not overwhelming. "I'm glad you feel seen," she said softly. "You deserve that." Rowan's throat bobbed as he swallowed. "It's more than that," he admitted. "You've changed the way I feel about myself. You've made things easier just by being you." Her breath gentled. Kindness had always come naturally to her, but hearing him say it mattered, that it helped him, brought a warmth to her chest she wasn't expecting. "Rowan," she murmured, "I only ever wanted to make this home feel safe for you." He nodded slowly, but there was still something unsaid lingering in his expression, a deeper truth trying to push through the cracks of his hesitation. He turned away again, pacing the small space between the chair and the window. Mira watched him with quiet patience, sensing that rushing him would only make him retreat. Finally, he stopped and whispered, "I've been carrying feelings I don't understand." Her heartbeat skipped, not out of fear, but out of sudden, delicate awareness. "Feelings?" she asked softly. Rowan lifted his eyes to hers, and the vulnerability in them made her breath still. "Not bad feelings," he explained quickly, "just confusing ones, ones I didn't expect, ones I don't know what to do with." Mira felt a slow ache settle in her chest. She understood confusion. She understood emotions arriving without permission. But she also understood responsibility, gentle, steady, unwavering. "Whatever you're feeling," she said, her tone calm and warm, "we can talk through it. You're not alone in trying to understand yourself." He bit his lip, struggling with the weight of his emotions. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," he said quietly. "I just started trusting you more than anyone else. And now, when I look at you, I feel something I can't explain." Her breath caught again, soft, steady, careful. Not alarmed, not fearful, just aware that this moment mattered more than she could yet fully grasp. She placed a gentle hand over her heart, grounding herself before she replied. "Rowan, sometimes when someone finally feels safe, their emotions get tangled. They mix trust with other feelings, even if those feelings don't belong where they've landed." He listened, his eyes glistening with unspoken questions. "You're still figuring out who you are," she added, "and that is completely okay. But I want you to know something important. Your feelings don't frighten me, and they don't change the care I have for you." Rowan's shoulders eased, as if those words gave him room to breathe. He stepped closer, just one careful pace, searching her face. "Mira, do you think I'm a bad person for feeling this way?" She shook her head gently. "No, you're human, you're honest, and honesty is never wrong." He let out a breath so fragile it almost disappeared in the quiet room. But then he whispered something so soft she barely caught it. "There's more I need to tell you." And as the words hung in the air between them, trembling, unfinished, waiting, Mira felt the night shift again, as though her heart was bracing for a truth she hadn't anticipated at all. Mira felt her pulse hush into a slower rhythm as Rowan stood before her, his breath shaky, his courage trembling at the edge of confession. The room felt smaller somehow, wrapped in a gentle stillness, as if the night itself wanted to protect whatever truth he carried. She waited, soft, patient, steady. Rowan's fingers brushed his forehead, as though trying to clear the swirl of thoughts he had held in for far too long. "There's something I've been afraid to admit," he whispered. "Afraid you'd pull away, or think less of me." Her heart clenched. She took a single step closer, so he wouldn't feel alone in this moment. "Rowan," she murmured, "I won't pull away from you, and nothing you say will make me think less of you." He let out a fragile breath, almost a sigh of relief. But he still hesitated, staring at the floor as though the words he needed were hidden in the wooden patterns beneath his feet. "It's not easy to explain," he said, "because the feelings don't make sense to me. They came out of nowhere, and I tried to ignore them, but they kept getting stronger." Mira nodded gently, encouraging him. He was young, still finding his way through emotions that arrived faster than he could make sense of them. She knew this wasn't about romance, not truly. This was about trust, about finding a safe anchor in a world that often felt too loud. Rowan finally lifted his gaze, revealing the fear behind his sincerity. "I don't think it's romantic," he said slowly. "It's not that. It's more like when I'm around you, I feel calm. I feel understood. I feel like I matter." He swallowed hard. "And I'm not used to feeling that with anyone." Relief washed through her chest, warm, grounding, gentle. Not because she doubted him, but because she understood him. She exhaled softly. "Rowan, what you're feeling is connection," she said, in a warm, steady tone. "Real connection. When someone finally feels safe, when they finally feel seen, it can feel confusing at first, like it's more than it is." She placed a hand over her heart. "But trust doesn't have to be confusing. Trust can just be trust." His eyes softened in quiet realization, as if her words untangled the knot inside him. He stepped back a little, giving himself room to breathe. "I didn't want it to be something wrong," he whispered. "I didn't want to lose what we have." She reached out and lightly touched his shoulder, gentle, reassuring, completely steady. "You're not losing anything," she promised. "You're growing. And part of growing is learning to name your emotions without letting them scare you." He closed his eyes, letting her words settle. When he opened them again, there was a brighter clarity in them, like someone who had finally found their footing. "I think," he said slowly, "I think I've been trying to understand myself for a long time, and talking to you makes it easier." "That's all I want," she whispered. "To help you feel grounded, to help you find your way." Rowan returned to the chair and sat down, shoulders no longer curled inward. He rubbed his palms together, but this time they weren't trembling. "There's something else," he added after a moment. Her chest tightened, not out of fear, but out of instinctive awareness that another truth was approaching. "What is it?" she asked softly. He looked up at her with a vulnerable honesty that almost broke her heart. "I think Dad notices things more than I realized." He paused. "He asked me earlier if something was bothering me. I didn't know what to tell him. I didn't want him to think I was putting distance between us." Mira felt a shift, small but significant. This wasn't just about Rowan's feelings. This was about the entire family, the fragile balance between them. She breathed slowly, gathering her thoughts before speaking. "We'll talk to him together if we need to," she said gently. "You don't have to face any of this alone." Rowan nodded, relief settling over him like a soft blanket. But the look in his eyes told her there was still one truth he hadn't shared, one final piece he had been holding back all night. And when he leaned forward, fingers clasped tightly again, she knew the next words would change the direction of everything that came after. "I need to tell you what happened earlier," he whispered. Mira's breath stilled. Mira felt the room grow still as Rowan leaned forward, fingers tightening together. The quiet around them felt almost delicate, as if the house itself understood that whatever he was about to share needed gentleness. She lowered herself onto the chair across from him, keeping her posture open, calm. "Tell me," she encouraged softly. Rowan inhaled, held the breath for a moment, then let it out slowly. "Earlier today, Dad asked me why I've been quieter." His voice trembled just a little. "He said he noticed I've been thinking a lot, and I didn't know what to say." Mira nodded, listening without interruption. "I tried to brush it off," he continued gently, "but he didn't believe me. He said he felt like something had shifted in me, and he asked if something was wrong between us, him and me." Rowan lowered his head. "I felt awful, Mira, because nothing's wrong with him. Nothing at all. I didn't know how to explain that I was sorting through my own feelings." She felt a quiet ache rise inside her. She had always admired Rowan's father, his steady nature, his patience, his kindness, and she knew how deeply he loved his son. The last thing she wanted was for Rowan to feel caught between two people he cared about. "What did you tell him?" she asked gently. Rowan's shoulders sagged. "I told him I just needed time, that I was figuring out who I was, and it didn't have anything to do with him." He swallowed. He looked relieved, but he also looked worried. Mira breathed in slowly, letting her heart settle. "Your honesty was enough," she reassured him, "and it's natural for him to worry. Parents do that because they care." Rowan nodded, his gaze lifting toward her again. "But there's something else," he whispered. "You're the one I feel safe talking to, and Dad, I think he knows that." Her chest warmed, not from pride, but from the tenderness of what those words meant. To be trusted was no small gift. To be trusted by someone still growing into himself was even more fragile, more meaningful. "I don't want him to feel replaced," Rowan said quietly. "I don't want him to think I rely on you more than him." Mira reached out, placing her hand over his in a soft, steady gesture. "Rowan, trust doesn't replace anyone, it expands." She squeezed gently. "You can rely on me and still rely on him. Your heart doesn't have to choose." He breathed shakily, relief flickering across his features. "And those confusing feelings you mentioned," she added in a calm, reassuring tone, "they're a sign of how deeply you appreciate being understood, and that's okay. It doesn't mean anything is wrong or misplaced. It just means you're human." Rowan blinked at her, something unspoken settling into clarity within him. "I didn't want the feelings to ruin things," he admitted. "I didn't want them to change how you see me." She shook her head gently, sincerity softening her words. "Nothing about this ruins anything," she whispered. And I see you exactly as you are, a thoughtful, sensitive, caring young man who feels deeply. That's something to be proud of, not something to fear." Rowan's eyes glistened, not with embarrassment, not with confusion, but with a quiet understanding he had been waiting to reach. He finally exhaled, a long, unburdened breath. "Thank you," he said softly, "for listening, for being here, for not pulling away." Mira smiled, a gentle curve full of warmth. "You didn't come to me because your feelings were wrong," she said. "You came because you were brave enough to face them." Rowan nodded slowly, almost reverently. "I think tonight helped me understand myself better," he admitted. "And I think I'm ready to talk to Dad again, properly this time." Her heart lifted, full of quiet pride. "That's a wonderful thing, Rowan," she said. "And I'll be here if you ever need to talk again, not to replace anyone, just to support you when you need a calm place to land." He smiled, a real, gentle smile that softened the weight he had carried for so long. And in that moment, Mira realized how much he had grown over the course of a single night. As he stood to leave, he paused at the doorway, glancing back at her with grateful eyes. "I trust you," he whispered, "more than I ever knew I could trust anyone." She felt the words settle inside her like a quiet light. "Good," she whispered back, "because trust is the beginning of everything that matters." Rowan nodded once more, then stepped into the hallway, leaving the room wrapped in a peaceful midnight calm. And Mira, alone in the soft glow of the lamp, felt something gentle settle inside her, a blend of relief, tenderness, and deep gratitude for the fragile human moment they had shared. The night had begun with uncertainty. It ended with clarity, quiet, graceful, and healing.